everybody just like worked together and wasn't like threatened by anybody else's success, like the music industry could be great.
Yeah.
But it is not like that.
Hey everybody, this is Fang from Lords of the Trident, and today we have the first of maybe many of a series of interviews about DIY band business and all sorts of fun stuff. And with us, we've got the amazing, talented, lovely Miss Sarah Longfield.
Hey, what's up?
Right here. And Sarah, for the people who are not familiar with you and what you do, tell us about yourself, tell us about the music you play, all that sort of fun stuff.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Sarah Longfield, and I've been playing guitar for like, I don't know, like 15 years. And I also play like other instruments here and there, and I started doing YouTube when I was 14, and I started like a band and doing tour stuff when I was like 18, 19, and I've been kind of doing both since, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So as a person who does, music full-time or almost full-time, can you tell like people who are out there in bands, like what was going through your mind when you just decided, okay, I'm going to take the plunge, I'm going to do this like for real, full-time. Like what was that like for you?
There was like no cognitive like process.
Okay.
I didn't intend on doing it full time or even still doing it at this point, honestly. When I was a kid, like I wanted to go to college for art. I wanted to be like an art teacher, and then I like thought maybe I'll go to music school, and I got denied to like every college I wanted to go to ever. And I had like a YouTube channel, and I was like, well, I'll make some YouTube videos, and then I worked like every horrible job ever that like I don't even think I could get a job in Madison anymore because I've quit every single like business in the city.
Which one was the worst? Which one was the worst?
Probably CapTel. I know you know everybody that's worked at CapTel, so.
AKA Craptel, right?
Yeah, call centers. And then like 2015 kind of rolled around, 2015, 2016, and I had like been working with Rob Scallon, and he was giving me ideas, on like how to build my YouTube channel up and some of the band stuff. Like we had done a couple tours at that point, and I was a line cook at the time, and I wanted to go to Chicago Open Air, and they couldn't find anybody to take my shift. I called like every place in the whole, like every branch or every like extra restaurant, and they had not a single person could take my shift. They're like, well, if you can't get your shift covered, you're fired. And I was like, okay, I quit.
Wow.
And then it was just like, well, now I'm freelance, so that was that.
That's amazing.
So.
So I told a few musician friends that I was going to sit down and talk to you and ask them, okay, what kind of questions should I ask? And there's one question that kept coming up.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, as someone who does music, for a living,
yeah,
right? Who depends on her music for an income.
Yes.
Do you find that it's taken any of like the joy out of making music? I mean, how is it different for you now than it was before you were depending on it as an income?
I think for some people, they can do it and like completely be unaffected. Like their love for it stays the same, their relationship with it stays the same. But I think for me, it's like a little bit more complex than that. So I would say that it has kind of changed my relationship with making music and changed my love for it a little bit. And that's for like a variety of reasons. It isn't just because of YouTube. It isn't just because of touring. It's not because of like, not solely because of like, getting on a label. It's like a combination of all of them. When you're like freelancing, you have to be taking income from like a million different sources. I'm sure there's like a bunch of different things you have to do to get by. And we have this like weird dynamic that's happening where we have like single independent artists that are doing the work of like 50 people. You know what I mean? Because labels are becoming more and more irrelevant. There are some that are still, thriving and doing really well, but they're adapting to like the super rapid changing music industry.
Sure.
And I think that increase, like, you have to be your marketer, and like you have to do PR, and you have to handle all your emails, and you have to be like so like organized and like on point with your logistics and on point with your budget, and you have to know exactly what you're doing all the time. Like being that person and trying to be a creative, which is like the opposite of that person. It's almost like having multiple personality disorder. Like you have to jump between being so many different people, and especially if you're a YouTube personality, because you have to like be like the most energetic, best version of yourself, you know what I mean? And that can be really hard if you spent all day doing emails. You're like, I don't want to be this person right now. So I think for me, because I'm so heavily a creative and so not a business person, like I don't have the same love for it that I had. And I'm struggling with that now more than I was at the very beginning, but I know there's a lot of freelancers in a bunch of different arts that feel similarly, so.
I've heard it said by many people that now is the worst time to be a professional musician.
Yes.
And also the best time to be a professional musician at the same time.
Yes.
So like, I guess A, what's your reaction to that? And B, what do you think makes it the worst or the best or both?
I definitely agree on both fronts. I think it is the best time to be a musician because you have all of the tools at your disposal. You can learn how to do anything on the internet. You can find out, what programs you need, how to work those programs, how to bring whatever is in your head into like actual real life, no matter what that thing is. And I think that access to like knowledge is incredible. I'm like blown away that we have it. But I also think the fact that there now is no vetting process for anything. You know what I mean? There's so much media, like an insane amount of media, As someone that creates media, I'm not condemning it, but there's so much of it, and we have to take it in all the time. And in like the social media and the apps and stuff that we've been given for consumption, I think, we're looking for, you need to be doing this now. You need to be like content creators. I mean,
Yeah.
You have to put stuff out constantly. You can't take a break. You're dead if you quit for 6 months. It's just not really a thing. And so I think it's really dark because it's so oversaturated and so much of it is accessible for free, just like the knowledge is accessible for free, that it's kind of devalued everything. And I think it's also changed how we experience live music. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping from like thing to thing,
please.
but there's so many aspects of it.
Yeah.
And I think because you can interact directly with the artist now, there's no wall between artist and fan, and there's almost no line between artist and fan because a lot of us are both of them now, which is really weird. So it's like, now that we see the process and it's all open and out there in front of us and we have access to talk to those artists and to just go on their social media and look at their YouTube videos, we see them more as like one of us and thus less desirable and less mysterious. Like people would go to shows because it was like this weird, interesting, like mysterious thing, and you go for the community and your friends are there and you want to like soak up the culture of it, but all of that has been demystified and kind of devalued.
Yeah, the artists don't really have any mystique anymore when you can chat them and they'll just answer right back.
And I think the fan to artist ratio has like flip-flopped. Like we have a ton of artists and not very many people that are just exclusively consuming music.
Right.
Which is kind of cool because all these people that listened to music and loved it had the opportunity to then try it out. But again, once you know all about that and you've seen it and you can interact with it in 2 seconds, what value does it hold?
What do you think is better? Is it better to have the ability to interact with and talk with person to person an artist that you really like love to death? Or do you think it was better when they were untouchable, they had this weird mystique?
Okay, I'm biased here, so my answer might not count, but I think, personally, I would have preferred it, with more distance just as an artist because it's so much to take in. You know what I mean? Like, on top of the 50 people that I said you already have to be to do this, you also are like a vulnerable human being working 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, that like is pouring your soul into something and you're giving it to the entire universe. And, that like direct feedback is really hard. I mean, I've been doing it for so long, I don't struggle with it, but I know it's like I have so many friends that are incredible musicians that are terrified to start YouTube and terrified.
You're talking about like people anonymously or as known individuals just commenting and saying, "Oh, sucks," or blah, blah, blah.
Or like
that kind
reaching
of
out. Yeah, that is one example of it. Another example is I think my phone number just leaked on the internet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I've been getting a bunch of random texts, like just some of them are nice or some of them are super vulgar. I don't know if it's one person. I don't know if it's a ton of people, but you can't escape it. You can't like go and like be at a family gathering and not have like some aspect of it permeate that, and your family's all watching too, they all see all of it, and that's a bit invasive, and I've had people like my family's been stalked before. Like, yeah, oh my God. So it's like, I think there needs to be a bigger separation.
Yeah. In that case, absolutely. Yeah, that's
I mean,
weird.
we worked on it, and I got all of their information, pulled, but it's a thing that you don't think about when you're 19. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and like,
absolutely.
you have random people from Canada calling your mom, asking what your favorite color is. You're like, oh, okay.
Oh wow, that is
Here we are.
kind of the dark side of it, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think it's cool to be able to, talk to, and I've had the opportunity to talk to tons of artists I love, but I don't think it's worth the trade-off, because I know so many YouTubers and so many successful musicians that are genuinely damaged by the things that people say to them, and like, it really bums me out, and I've even been affected by it, like, not a ton, but enough to like make me be like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. For everybody who's watching, we read all the comments. Yeah. We do.
Yep.
You might think we don't, but we do.
Everybody does.
So stop being dicks on the internet. Seriously.
Yep.
So switching gears a little bit, right? You've played a lot of live shows. You've been touring a lot, for years.
Yep.
What would you say is something that the average concert goer, the average fan, what is a very standard misconception that the average fan has about what it's like to be a touring artist, like life on the road?
I think the biggest thing is that the fan, which I think is still great that they sense there's like a separation, but I think they feel like the person that's on stage and the person that's watching the stage are very different. You know what I mean? I mean, I even feel that when I'm at a show, like, I'll be like, oh man, that person's life must be like so crazy, but then like, I've met all of those people, and like, I've kind of become a very small version of that, and I think, it's the same, like, we're all people doing a thing, and they're probably getting paid like the equivalent of a McDonald's manager, you know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, so it's like, it's not a glamorous thing. Like, a lot of us are sleeping in cars because we can't afford hotels after the show, like, I mean, I think every tour, like, we've slept in, we haven't even been able to rent a van because it's like, we'll just take one of our friends' minivans, or like, we'll take my 4Runner, from like 2003 and just sleep in it, or, camp out in between shows. So, I mean, but I think people are starting to see, because like, the internet makes it all visible, that it's not a particularly glamorous thing. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, because when people see that it's not quite, again, it takes away the mystique, and it takes away a bit of the value.
Yeah, you would go to a show and say like, well, why am I, what's the value in like seeing this person who's living out of their car?
Right, exactly.
When I can just listen to them on Spotify or whatever.
And that sounds terrible to say, but it is true. Like, when we see people that are living super glamorous lifestyles, like, we value them differently.
I've heard that a lot of YouTube stars and a lot of musicians have talked about the idea of instead of selling music, like selling a lifestyle.
Yes.
So they plan out like their Instagram photos, and they make sure that they're always, creating like a brand around themselves.
You have to now. That's because people don't just want like a section of something, and this goes back to the internet allowing everything to be visible. Like, you can't, everything has been compartmentalized, so you need to really be the whole package, or you might not pull it off, I mean, you used to be able to like just be a musician, and that was all you had to present, and people would like, absorb the culture and the visual and the image based on that one thing, and that was good and fine and well, but now they want the music and the live show and the aesthetic and the Instagram and the YouTube and like, what you're doing, why you're doing, when you're doing, and that's, again, it's even more to take on,
Yeah, if you saw, if like there was a Kiss nowadays and it had an Instagram and you saw them without makeup, like, immediately, like what would they have? When the Kiss gets rid of his makeup?
Right.
So okay, so if there's, since we've all been to a bunch of shows, we've all played a bunch of shows. If there's one thing about the live show experience, be it the ticketing, the timing, the opening bands, anything that you could just like wave a magic wand and instantly get rid of forever, what would it be?
That's no question. Merch cuts. I think merch cuts are the absolute like evil. Like, I've had people try to fight me on this. I've had famous people try to fight me on this. They're like, you just don't understand. I'm like, no. No. There is nothing just about, because I'm not going to lie about this. Like, we have been on massive tours. Like, on the Winter Sun tour, we were getting paid $100 a night. I'm not going to hide that. So it's like, because, and we were told, like, you should be grateful you're not being asked to buy on to this tour. And I was like, okay, thanks. And then so we go on the tour, we do the thing, and like, you know, when you're only getting paid $100 a night and you're merch restricted, because people don't know that on a lot of big tours with big bands, like they'll restrict the smaller bands that are like, and so they say you can only sell this much merch. You're only allowed to sell like 2 or 3 designs sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And they tell you like, oh, you have to inflate your prices to like $25 a shirt.
And then if your prices for your merch that you're only having 2 T-shirts up for sale are the same as Winter Sun, you know, who's gonna go and buy you? You know.
Why do you think they do that? I've never been able to understand that.
I don't know.
Because like the people, you know, for we ran into this when we opened for Steel Panther, and I fought them on it like you did. And I'm like, look, we're no threat. Who is coming out to see us? I'm sorry, but everybody's coming out to see Steel Panther. We're like the little dog and pony show at the beginning. They're not gonna like look at our merch, look at your merch, and go like, well, theirs is cheaper, so I'm gonna buy that one. You know, no, they came out to see you guys. So like, I haven't ever been able to articulate why they do that. What business sense that makes. I think
it's just like an archaic thing that, you know, someone started and other bands were like, oh yeah, that makes sense, you know what I mean? And then it carried forward, and merch cuts were the same. I think, you know, and the venue should not be taking a cut of the merch. The venue does not help sell the merch. If they do, then they deserve a cut. But if they're not selling the merch, and, you know, especially from opening bands, like, okay, if the headlining band is pulling in, you know, $80,000 to $100,000, you know what I mean, and the venue's hosting them and giving them the resources to do that, you know, maybe a negotiation is fair. But for a band getting paid $100 a night to merch cut them, and the merch cut could potentially be more than my guarantee. So I got in a couple screaming matches.
Probably will be more than your guarantee.
Yeah.
Probably.
And so I got in a couple screaming matches with some venues on that tour, and I was like, this is not just. And she's like, it's not a matter of just, it's a contract. I was like, your contract is bullshit and you should feel bad. And I basically ended up comparing them to Nazis, and then we got kicked out. Whatever, I don't care.
But you kept your merch money.
I did.
There you go.
Yep, I had to feed my guys. I was like, look, I have people to pay. Like, this is my responsibility. They're basically my children. Like, I have to pay them. We need to eat. We're not getting paid enough to even go to the show. How can you feel good about this in any way, shape, or form? And like, whatever. I don't care. I don't care if I never get to play those venues again. Like, if you're gonna do that to me, I don't want to do it.
Yeah,
so
that is super, super scummy.
Yeah, it really is. That's the one thing I hate about the industry. Like, it's so cutthroat, and people are so shisty. Like, in every facet of it, if someone can like get even like $10 out of you, they will. Like, everybody somewhere wants a cut from something, and they're all relying on the artist to provide that. You know what I mean? Like, it's so toxic. If everybody just like worked together and wasn't like threatened by anybody else's success, like, the music industry could be great. But it is not like that.
So, you know, going back to the touring and such like that, there's, you know, a lot of people who watch this series are bands that are you know, in the garage, or maybe they're playing once a month and they want to try to get to the next level. They want to up their game a little bit. You and I have seen a lot of bands and have and have opened for a lot of bands and have had a lot of bands open for us.
Yes.
What would you say is one thing that you see a majority of, you know, say the I don't want to say smaller time bands, but bands that maybe are not, you know, touring or well known. What's one thing that you see them constantly doing wrong, and how would you change that?
So, you know, I don't really think there's anything you can do specifically wrong in a music career, but I think if you're looking to progress to, like, you know, touring, I think it can be important not to oversaturate your market when you're playing, because I know, like, when we were playing, you know, you're also kind of you're forcing the mystery away from it when you're playing somewhere twice a week for 2 years straight, you know what I mean? Or playing in the same city twice a week for 2 years straight. I think it is important to space out your shows, space out your local shows, so that when the shows are happening, you're getting the best draw that you can have. Because if you're looking to hire a booking agent, which should be your next step, like, booking agents are so important. It is so hard to self-book a tour. Like, before label, before manager, before anything, if you are looking to move forward, my thing would be get solid local shows, solid regional shows, a couple, like, weekend warriors, and then I would look into getting a booking agent, you know? And the best way to do that is just to reach out. You know, you can go on different websites and you can reach out via email. Be short, don't, like, you know, some people will write just paragraphs, you know. No one has the time to deal with that. Just say, hey, we're this band, we do this, we draw this amount, here's some links, let me know. You know what I mean? That would be like, if I were to take the next step, and that's kind of like what we kind of just fell into it, because that seems to be just how everything happens. But
Yeah, right.
that if I was thinking about it, that's probably what I would have done while I was playing hundreds of shows to no one.
Sure. Going back to one of my first questions, thinking about when you decided to do music full time, or maybe when it was just sort of foisted upon you, right?
I don't have a job. So.
There's a lot of bands out there that say, oh man, I'd love to, I think I'm ready to take the plunge and just do this full time and just do it,
Yep.
Quit my job, sell my house, burn down my, whatever
Yes.
they do.
Your entire existence.
Yeah, burn down my entire existence, live out of a van. I'm ready to do it.
Yep.
As somebody who's been there, what would you say is something that you would recommend people either do, think about, get in line, or something like that before they decide to burn down their house and live life on the road?
Savings account. Okay, like I cannot tell you how many musicians I've met, and I'm like, we talk about like finances and budgeting, and I talk about my savings account, and they're like, I don't have a savings account. I'm like, what? You freelance and you don't have a savings account? Like, how are you gonna get by on the month you make nothing? Because like, you're gonna have months you make nothing, like $0, -$, like, and like when I was about to start doing that, I made sure I had $4,000, and I worked the shittiest jobs to save up that $4,000. You know what I mean? It wasn't like gifted to me. My parents did not give me money or anything. They're like, yeah, good luck, have fun. So get to a point where you have enough money to live for a set amount of time that you would feel comfortable. Before I've made any big move in music, whether it was touring or moving out east or like whatever I decided to do, like I wouldn't let myself do it until I had like enough of a cushion, because I can't have the stress of like, I have no money in my bank account, how am I gonna pay rent? Like I have bills, like, you know what I mean? Insurance, like credit cards, like what am I gonna do? And then once you know and you budget really well, then you can figure out how much you have to make each day and like how much you need to save when you're done. And if you make a profit, what % of that profit is going to go into, And if you can, put it in a savings account that's going to have some kind of return, you know what I mean? Some kind of like, you're putting your money in there and it's just making money on itself. Not much, because the market is still shit, but like, whatever you can get will help,
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of people out there that really think about the financials of
the most important thing. Like, your finances will buy your freedom. That's rule number one of freelance. Like, every month I put like as much money as I can. I don't even take a percentage. I'm just like the bare minimum to live, and then whatever I can into my savings account. Like, I live in the shittiest apartment. I have like no nice things. I mean, gear that people send you sometimes, but it's like, I'll make sacrifices wherever I have to save that money. And I think that's the other thing. If you're used to living a certain lifestyle, be prepared to not.
to give it up.
Yep.
Yeah.
You just want a shower, a roof over your head.
No more fancy beers.
Like, I was living out of my practice space for like, oh my God, on and off for like 3 years, because I was like, whatever, my practice space is like $200 a month, and I can just shower at the gym and like crash with friends and like, because when you're touring, like,
sure, yeah, who cares?
But
yeah, you've talked about, and I think there's been a lot of talk online about now being an era of like the new music industry.
Yes.
What would you define that as? What would you say separates the new industry from the old industry? Is there like one defining characteristic or something you could point to say, okay, this is clearly the difference?
I mean, I think there is so many things about it that are different. I think they are just like this, you know what I mean? The only crossover is that noises happen, like there's just nothing in between. I don't think it's anything like it was. I think the power dynamic is all over the place, labels power going like this, artist power going like this, artist power going like this, because fan power going like this. Like it's all so blended and so oversaturated and so, I think one thing that because I had a lot of people ask me about this, because I think a lot of people are scared. I honestly think the biggest thing is that we've kind of removed the culture from it. Like I said, I kind of touched on this earlier. Like when you would go to a show, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't alive, but the 70s, you would go and you would like meet friends and be there and be present and be interacting, and you would go for the atmosphere and the culture and the people that were like-minded, you know what I mean? Like-minded people meeting up at shows to talk about things that they feel passionately about while listening to music. Like, it was just as much about the aesthetic and the socialization and the culture of it as it was about the sound. And you were getting it in this like all-encompassing thing, and this was what you did to live that music. And then if you wanted to try and experience it outside of the live show, you know, you could buy records and CDs and get kind of a watered down version of it and you know, enjoy that on its own. But it was all here. It was all in one bubble. That was like music and the music industry. It was still horribly corrupt, but it was all here. And then now you have like, it's all segmented, and there's no way to bring it together cohesively for like a large group of people. You have like, you listen to the music in this avenue, you watch the video in this avenue, you go to the show in this avenue, in terms of like aesthetic culture, I think it's very individualistic right now. You know, there isn't any driving like fashion for anything. It's all just all over the place because fashion's having a similar thing that music is having and art is having. And so it's so segmented. Like now we have like a culture of individualism, and that really deprives people of like the social aspect of it, and I think that really actually takes away from it. I know it shouldn't, because like we think we're making music and people are listening to it and that's it. Yeah. But it isn't that. It's so much more than that, you know? And it's not there anymore. So
it's interesting you say that, because I think that a lot of, at least in more my genre of metal, I think a lot of the draw of the big festivals, you know, like people going out to those festivals is not necessarily the bands, but it's more like seeing the same people every year, connecting with those people, catching up. I mean, I know if I go to Prog Power like to like meet up with people and like say hi and hug them once a year. You know, so yeah, that's an interesting thing.
And I think festivals are like the one saving, you know, as much as people hate on like, you know, EDM fests or whatever kind of festival you're having, I think that's like the one remaining, you know, dingleberry on the shit that is like an old music scene, you know? That's all we have left of that. And I think that's why so many people go to festivals and why festivals can get away with charging so much money. And it's people want the immersive experience. And the internet has robbed us of that. And I think we should all be pissed. But, oh well.
Yeah. So, you know, we've said a lot of like good and bad things about the internet in general and how it's changed music. But I think, you know, you and I would both agree that nowadays, especially, the internet is incredibly crucial to not only what we do, but how we do it and how we learn. And, you know, there's a lot of kind of unspoken do's and don'ts about bands on the internet that I try to, you know, spell out and just kind of take away that sort of mystique. Is there a specific don't that you see a lot of bands, either big-time bands or small-time bands, doing, any internet mistakes that you see bands making consistently?
Politics.
Oh!
Don't talk politics. I mean, I've done it. I do it. I'm an extremely passionate person, and it bleeds into every aspect of my life. And I enjoy, you know, putting the things I'm passionate about out there. I love connecting with people that, you know, are like-minded, and I love having discussions with people that are not. But that's not a good way to grow your career. That is not a career-building move. That is a very tumultuous thing to start. I think, you know, you need to recognize that your brand, it can be separate from you as a person, and you don't have to share everything. You don't have to give people everything. And I think, I mean, like I said, do as I say, not as I do. I still struggle
we've all
with
made
that.
those mistakes, right?
Yeah, I still struggle with that because I love connecting with people, and that's part of why I do music, and I want to like let them know who I am completely. I am so transparent when I meet people at shows. I'm like, what do you want to know? What do you want to talk about? Like, I don't care if it's like your drug addiction. Like, I don't care. Like, I will talk about anything with anyone. But like, if you're looking specifically to build your brand or your career, you need to focus on solely promoting those things. You know what I mean? It can be nice once in a while to reach out and you know, show people that you're human and that you're a person, but I think for most people trying to do the thing, separation, distance. Do not tie your name and your persona to a thing, unless you're building a fake persona that you want to use. I mean, you know, like Billie Eilish is an example. Like, you know, she has an aesthetic, she has a clothing line, she has like, you know, she's done a lot of interviews, like she has like a style, and it's an all-encompassing thing, and she can be all of those things, and you know, she's at a position where it's not going to compromise anything unless, but still, she doesn't bring up politics. Lesson number one.
I think the only time I've seen bands successfully do that is when they have established themselves. You know, for like really, really heavily established themselves, and they have like a career, and they've been able to sell at stadiums, and they know they're going to keep selling out stadiums until they croak.
But even that, it's still risky. It's still super risky. Like, you know, you say one thing that you know, can be, you know, even if you're having a bad day, you say a thing, you didn't necessarily mean it, but it's not a good thing that you would have said, your career is done, like 100% done.
Yeah. And the internet is forever.
Yes. And it is. And it's hard to think about that because we don't, like, as a species, we just don't forethink. It's not a thing we're good at. Like, our brains don't do that as effectively as they should. So it's hard to think about. But yeah, forever.
So I know we talked about maybe a little bit about this earlier, but in the olden days of, you know, in the 70s, 80s, right, in the old music industry, a band could go silent for 2-3 years.
Yes.
You know, and they could still make a viable living off of touring and just
their record sales alone. Yep.
And nowadays, it feels like everybody is trying to be a content creator. He said knowingly into the camera. But, you know, like, there's an expectation where if an artist goes silent for a year or 2 years, I assume that they're done and
forever.
dead.
Yeah.
You know, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about, you know, the pressure to constantly make new stuff and constantly tell the world I exist?
Yeah, right. Honestly, like, I hate, that's like my biggest, like, if I had to pick one thing that, like, I could just change, it wouldn't even be the internet. It wouldn't be, you know, any of the things we've discussed so far. It's the burnout. Like, you can't, as one person doing 50 things 24/7, 365 for years and years and years on end, you can't keep going without hitting walls, you know what I mean? But unlike tour, like, those walls don't end. They just keep hitting, and they hit harder and harder and harder the bigger you get and the more fans you have and the more people that are following you, and the pressure mounts and mounts and mounts and mounts. And then when you get signed to a label, you have new pressures. When you have, like, you know, deals with advertising companies on Instagram, new pressures. Like, your emails start to get completely out of control because, you know, you're more visible, more present, more people want to work with you, more people want to talk to you, and the pressure just keeps mounting. I can't tell you how many YouTubers I know that, like, have a drinking problem, you know what I mean? Or like are completely depressed, or, like, you know, burn out, and they are so scared that when they burn out, they're not going to be able to come back, that in the next day they delete their video and they come back and they're like, hi guys. You know what I mean? There is no, we're so fast paced now because of the internet, and we're so bombarded that if you're not in it, you know, constantly. Even when I go on tour, like, if I don't make a video while I'm on tour, which is incredibly hard to do, it's so hard to make videos on tour, and I get back, like, my follower count drops. My video views go back to, like, no joke, like 20,000 when I'm starting out in the first week, and that's, like, insane for someone who's been doing YouTube for 10 years and has, like, you know, hundreds of
hit videos.
Yeah,
and stuff like
right.
That.
Like, you know, to jump back to 20,000, you're like, oh my God, I'm, like, right back where I started again. And then, you know, you don't post a video for a month and you post again and people are like, oh my God, we thought you were dead. And you're like, oh no, like, this expectation it's, you know.
It's crazy.
It is. And it's like, as a creative, it's like, none of us are mentally stable.
No.
Like, no, none of us, like, you don't make things when you're happy. Nobody that's happy makes stuff. Like, you have to be tortured and horribly just, you know, confused all the time about everything. It's not a personality type that lends itself well to extreme, unending, constant pressure from a million different sources. Like, you know, the label will be like, well, I want this thing by this day. And I'm like, yeah, you guys have 50 people that are delegated to each specific task. I am one human, and the label is a small facet of the thing that I do. And then I'll have, like, you know, YouTube has to do this, and if I don't make these videos, my patron count goes down. You know, so I'm just like, ah! You need to have a team. All the people that really, really pull it off at a high level eventually hire other people to help.
Team, right.
Yep.
I know we talked about touring in general,
Yes.
and what the best thing to sell on tour is. Currently, you know, digital sales, streaming, all the digital realm versus physical sales, shirts, CDs, vinyl, whatever. What's helping you keep the lights on more at the moment?
I mean, just Patreon.
Patreon.
I mean, I love, like, you know, I do make money on tour. I make decent money on tour. I mean, most of the time there are some tours where I'm like, oh my God. But, you know, all these things help in small increments and help bump up the savings account. But my bread and butter is Patreon right now, you know, and even that is not very much, but it is enough to get my horrible, shitty rent paid for my horrible, shitty apartment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, like, just the knowledge that, okay, if I make a couple videos, I can pay my rent and, like, you know, put a little bit of money away and then just, like, focus on ways to keep building revenue streams. So
you'd say, like, the new way of crowdfunding and crowdsourcing is what's essentially kind of keeping you alive at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I do get really good advertising offers from companies for YouTube videos sometimes. That can be a lifesaver on, like, months where I have to, like, save up for tour. you know, or save up for expenses that come up here and there. But my number one, like, this is what makes this the most viable for me, is knowing that every month I'm going to get this amount of money.
Right.
Or something close to that.
Yep. Hey, Sarah, what's your Patreon account? Look into that camera and say.
It's just my name. It's Sarah Longfield. Patreon.com/Sarah Longfield.
And our Patreon account is patreon.com/Swords of the Trident, but you probably already knew that. And for the people watching on YouTube who are not on either of our Patreons, we're going to be posting the entire unedited video. Well, slightly edited. There's a few times where I got up to, you know, change cameras or whatever. But the slightly edited version, you're going to get the whole shebang if you sign up at any amount for me, and probably any amount for you. Yeah.
Anything else.
Anything, $1. You'll get the entire interview of us blabbing for, you know, I don't know, an hour.
Yeah,
you know,
something.
And you'll get all of the knowledge. So go to patreon.com/Sarah Longfield or patreon.com/Swords of the Trident, or heck, why don't you go to both? $2,
Do the
right?
thing.
And jump on today. Well, all right. Tell everybody where we can find you online, what your next tour date is, what's going on in the Sarah Longfield world.
So all of my handles all over the internet are just Sarah Longfield. That's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can even just /Sarah Longfield on any of the most popular websites. You'll find my thing. And then I do have a tour coming up all of May. I'm touring the U.S. with Felix Martin.
Cool.
For anybody that's known me for a while and has been following, I toured with him like 3 or 4 years ago, and that was great. So hopefully we'll see you guys out there again. And then in June and July, we're going to be doing a little bit of Europe and a UK Tech Fest, little UK tour too. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much for sitting down with me. And,
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and good luck on the road.
Yeah, thanks.